Join us today as we do some problem solving, resulting in new ideas on beads, baubles, and jewels.
Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Dreamtime Creations, an online supplier of crystals, findings, and jewelry making supplies since 1989. DreamtimeCreations.com. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com.
Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, your host. Some of the best ideas come from trying to solve a particular design problem. Learn from this week's experts as they help solve some common dilemmas in design. First, Jean Campbell returns with a lesson on how to form herringbone increases and decreases and how that applies to design. Then, Kate Richbourg is back with soldering dome shapes from Simple Soldering. Next, it's today's jewelry workshop and how to glue crystal flatbacks onto all sorts of accessories for your own custom look. Finally, meet Elizabeth Ward as she solves your storage issues with space-saving ideas for bead storage. Jean is up first. I'm here with Beadwork Stitch Pro Jean Campbell. And Jean, you have a great idea for increasing and how that can really work for shaping your beadwork.
Yeah, we're going to be working with herringbone stitch, a really basic stitch that everybody should know. It's one that you can find out how to do online.
And we'll have the instructions.
We'll have the instructions, and I'll show you how to do herringbone stitch. But if you increase herringbone stitch, something that a lot of people don't know how to do, you can do all kinds of things, shaping and widening and
oh, it sounds
curving.
good.
Yeah.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Let's do it.
Okay.
I am working with these size 6 Baroque beads, which I'm really loving. You're going to start with a row of ladder stitch. And again, that's a really basic stitch that you can find out how to do. You just need something
use it as a foundation.
Right. So as you do herringbone stitch, you always want an even number of beads. And this is just regular flat herringbone stitch. You pick up 2 beads, pass down through the next bead in the row, and pull it tight. And you see how it makes that herringbone shape, that V?
Yeah.
And you're going to pass up through the next bead. And when I pull tight, that should come together nicely.
And you can see that it forms 3 columns.
Yeah, so this, I have 6 across, so it's going to make 3 columns of 2. Pass down through that one, pass up through the next.
And that chevron pattern is so popular, you see it everywhere.
It's so pretty, and you can really feature it by changing colors. Now these big beads, I'm using double thread, and since we're on TV, I want to use the bigger beads, but you really need to pull tight. This is how I make my turnarounds in herringbone stitch because I want to be set up for the next row, and I'm coming out down here. So I just loop the thread around the outside and come up between columns like this.
Oh, okay.
And pull tight and out to the side. And that's going to hitch the thread onto this cross thread here. And then I just pass up these 2 side beads. So now I'm ready for my next
So that gets you in the
stitch.
right position. Just go back across.
Right. So now I want to show you how to do the increase.
Okay.
That's what this is really all about. So I'm going to pick up 2 of my size 6s to establish the column, pass down through the next one. But before I pass up through the following one, like I did on the way over, I'm going to pick up one of these pretty little crystal bicones and then pass up through, easier said than done, this next one.
So you're positioning it between the 3 columns.
Yeah, and see how it nestles in like that? So let me do it again. I pick up 2 to establish the column, pass down through the next one and pull tight. Make sure they're sitting in that pretty little shape. Pick one up, pass through the next.
All right, so anytime you wanted to, say, flare or widen your beadwork.
Or embellish. It's a really nice way to embellish.
Definitely.
And now I'll show you with this bracelet, this is basically what we just did. So you see how those are nestled neatly inside this is a 2-column bracelet of the size 6s, nestled these little crystals in between. But then we go and have some fun.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! With these long magatamas. So in the next row, I did 1 long magatama, then 2, then 3, then 4, so that it widens. And the other kind of magical thing that happens is it also curves the bracelet.
So that's what's giving it that. So you have the double technique there. You have the texture of the beads that are adding into your increases.
Right. And it makes this pretty little hedgehog kind of.
Yeah. Well, we should point out, too, the megatamas that we're talking about, this is long style that has a hole at the top. They are directional.
They are directional, and so you need to string them when you pick them up so that they're all sitting the same way. I mean, you don't have to, but if you're going to get that neat kind of dragon scale look,
right,
you want to do that.
Okay.
So there's lots. That's one way of doing the increases, but you can, you can texture, embellishment.
Yeah, this bead right here, it looks like you use different sizes, different colors.
Yeah, so different sizes and colors, and then the more that you add, this is a tubular herringbone, but the more beads that you add, you start shaping. And so that's the only reason that tubular rope is kind of fat in the middle, because
of the increases. And
right.
the spiral is created by the way that you add, the order that you add the beads to the herringbone, right?
Right, and that's a technique that we'll learn in a different episode.
Okay.
But you can add the increases by adding, the green between those columns.
Yeah, this is really cool, and I could see this as a pendant or a fringe on something, or you could turn this into an earring.
Well, and that could just have been a purple herringbone thing, but adding that green just really pops it.
Oh, yeah.
And then the crystals between, yeah.
And on this one, same technique here.
Same technique, but widens, kind of creates a fan, and a great opportunity for color play and texture. The important part of that bracelet is the decoration there, and it's just from that. So.
And this one, these make it so dimensional.
Yeah, this is basically the same technique. The shaping on that bracelet is just from the increases.
Oh, and it looks so different using the different styles of beads.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Stitch Pro Jean Campbell.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
We'll be right back. I'm here with designer and author Kate Richbourg. And Kate, you have clever ideas for soldering and making it really simple too.
Well, that's my life. Simple soldering, for sure.
It's great. And we're talking about design challenges and problem solving today. And these are good tips for how to attach something that's domed to a flat surface.
Right, because sometimes that can pose a problem. If you're going to go ahead and solder a dome onto something flat, you always need to have a little hole to release the fumes as you solder, because if you don't, then that little dome is going to jump right off.
Oh, okay. So it actually prevents it from adhering.
Exactly.
So how do you create the little pilot?
So the little hole, we're going to use one of these little screw down hole punches, really, really simple. And what I like to do is I like to take my little tile here, my little sampler tile, and I like to give myself a little mark just so I know where my hole's going to be. because it's easy to, you know, punch in the wrong place for sure. So after that little mark is there, I'm going to come in and line it up right here, and I'm just going to carefully screw down the little punch until it meets, and then I'm going to double check all of the angles just to make sure that it's in the place I want it to be.
Okay.
Now I'm just going to come in and twist the punch until I feel it break through the metal. And
there went your dot.
There went my dot. And then I'm just going to back it right up. And there you can see I've got my little hole, and
you can
I'll
save your dot.
Yeah, save my dot for another project.
Good idea. Okay. So then after you have this set up, where do you go next?
Well, we're going to create the dome, the actual dapped piece there. And what I use, now you can use what you might have at home, a wooden dapping block, or you may have a metal dapping block. Either one will work. This wooden one will give it a slightly more of a shallow curve, but all you do is you take your little blank, you place it in the well of the dapping block, and we would just go ahead and tap it really lightly. With a wooden dapping block, you want to use a plastic or a rawhide mallet. And you just give it a few little taps, and that's going to give you your nice little curve. And you can see I've done a little more of a shallow curve on this guy here.
Oh yeah, and that looks really pretty too.
Yeah.
You made your own clasp.
Yeah, well, I like to make my own clasps. Yeah, totally, I love it. Now, to solder this guy, what you want to do is we want to use some paste solder, and we're going to apply our paste solder using our titanium solder pick. And you want to think about when you are applying your solder, think about it as like the little numbers on a clock. So if this was 12 o'clock, I'd go at 12, 6, 9, and 3, and then 1, 2, 4, 5, and so on until you have got 12 little dots of solder right on there.
Okay, now why do you do that rather than spreading it around the edge?
Well, I think that it's easier to place little dots, number one, and I also don't want to put too much solder on this piece. So I find that when I just put little dots and when I heat it, the solder all runs together and forms one unbroken line, and that prevents me from just putting way too much solder. It's easy to pack a lot of solder on here, but little dots, I think, in the form of a clock helps me really control where I'm putting things.
Attaching these, if you were attaching, here you're going to show us how to attach the dome to a flat surface, but let's say you were putting two domes together to create a bead, for example.
Right.
Would you do the same thing with the solder?
Well, what I would do is, yeah, I would place my solder on just like I'm doing here, on one side of the dome, and then I just place it in like a little depression in my block, and then I put the other dome right on top of it. So solder only needs to go on one side.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and place this right on, now that the solder is on. I'm going to place it right on my tile, my sampler tile.
Okay.
And my soldering surface is a kiln brick. We're soldering on a little cookie sheet, which is our heat-resistant surface. We want to make sure that we have a quenching bowl nearby because that's what our tile is going to go into.
Okay.
Of course, we're going to be wearing our
safety
glasses, our glasses. And we want to make sure that we're working in a well-ventilated area, of course, and have a fire extinguisher nearby because you never know. Better safe than sorry.
Right.
And then here's my butane microtorch. So I'm just going to pop this guy on. And I'm going to come on down and slowly start to heat the piece. If I bring my flame down too close or too fast right onto the tile, my little dome is going to jump. So I just want to heat it gradually, and you're going to see that happen right now.
And you can tell by the color turning a little bit on the tile.
Exactly. As well as with the paste solder, you might see a little bit of smoke, which is the binder. See that right there?
Yep.
It's the binder of the solder kind of burning away, maybe a little bit of flame, but that's no big deal. You just keep holding on all the way through. And at this point, if you hadn't drilled that little hole, this dome would be jumping off right about now. But you want to look at, see how evenly and thoroughly I'm heating the tile. And you can see that little rim of solder, how that's flowed. It's molten, and now it's flowed all the way around the base of my dome, my little dapped dome. and you're looking at that little line there. And once that solder has flowed, because I moved the torch all the way around, the solder follows the heat of that flame, so it gets that nice unbroken line.
All right, well, you made it look really easy.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoy making it look easy for you.
So then you're going to crunch it, and you're ready. Let's take a look at the tile here that you finished. So you have one that's face down like you just showed us, and one that's faced up.
Exactly, and it's just a good practice for, you know, soldering different types of domes.
Of course, you could use this a lot of different ways. Well, thank you so much, Kate.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I'll be right back with the jewelry making workshop. If you're like me, you've started using crystals in your jewelry making and you're addicted to the sparkle. Now you want to attach crystals to everything. Well, in today's jewelry lesson, I'm going to show you some ideas for choosing the right adhesive for your project. So let's start out with these sparkly shoes. And anything that you do with leather or other non-porous surfaces like a cell phone, you'll want to use epoxy. And epoxy is two-part adhesive that you mix together, and you'll follow the directions for curing time. Now, there are a couple things to make this easier. There are syringes that you can use to put the glue in and make sure that your adhesive is perfectly placed on your piece, your article, whether it's a belt or shoes or purse, what have you. And a great tool to use with flat back crystals is a wax stick. So take a look at these flat backs. You'll see that they do not have any adhesive on the back, and they have that really great faceting on the front that makes them very brilliant. And you could use your wax stick then to just pick up each crystal one at a time and place it on your piece that you're going to glue it on. And of course the syringe, you'll want to do your dot of glue first and then press the crystal onto it. Okay, now there's a different kind of flat back to use with fabric. These are Hotfix. They have adhesive already on the back, and they have the faceting on the front. Of course, they come in tons of colors, and you can adhere them to fabric. You can also put them on ribbon and other materials that are porous. So you'll want to do a water test, and if the water soaks into the surface of the fabric, then you'll know that that glue is going to bond permanently with the fabric. To adhere them, you'll use a heat set tool. This has a special tip that you use to pick up the crystal. So when your tool is hot, I don't have this one plugged in, but when your tool is hot, you'll pick up a crystal just by placing it on the top of the crystal and then pressing it firmly down onto your fabric to attach it. You'll be able to tell that the adhesive is ready when it bubbles a tiny bit. Now, an alternative to using the heat set tool is to use flat back crystals without the adhesive on the back and use a special glue that works for fabric. And that's handy when you're adding just a few crystals to costuming or wardrobe of some kind. Now, there's also a style of crystal that has adhesive that's meant for paper or wood, and you can use this to attach to paper crafting of all kinds. And I made this little card here just by using this pattern that's already prepared for you. You can see the crystals just stick to your clear sheet, and you press them down, and you'll want to position it, and then just go over it with your finger. If you feel like it needs extra pressure, you could use a corner of your bead mat or something to press it down a little bit. You wouldn't want to use anything that's too hard like a craft stick, but you can just do that and then lift your clear away, and your pattern stays really nice on your card. And that's a fun way, of course, that you can bling up gifts too. Now, the last thing that I wanted to show you is crystal chatons are the style of crystal that has a pointed back. They're available in a lot of different colors. They come in many different sizes, and they work really well with all these bezel settings that we've been showing you on Beads, Baubles and Jewels. We have lots of ideas, of course. What you do with this is mix together the equal parts of both colors. So this one is kind of going to turn into the white color. So you're mixing the gray, and this is a special epoxy putty that when you mix it, it cures completely in 24 hours, but you have plenty of time for setting your chatons in the putty. And if you take a look at the necklace that I made here, it was using this technique, and I just mix those two parts, press them into the bezel setting, and then use the wax stick to press the chatons into place. And that's our jewelry making workshop, all about choosing your adhesives for crystal. I'm here with Elizabeth Ward, and today we're talking about problem solving. Elizabeth, you have some great ideas for getting organized.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me on the show. Well, I've been collecting beads for 20 years, so I have quite a big stash of my own to organize.
Oh, I would love to come and play in your studio someday. Well, how did you get started?
Well, I pulled everything together, and then I divided it into 4 categories: beads, findings, tools, and stringing materials.
Yeah, so this is wonderful because you can see everything.
Yes, I first decided to organize by color because it helps me when I'm designing. So this is my yellow-orange tray, and the transparency is really important for 2 reasons. First, when you can see what you have, you don't keep buying the same thing over and over again.
That makes sense.
And secondly, it just saves time. I can find what I need right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people get caught up in having a great idea, and then by the time they find everything they need, the magic is, the moment has passed, maybe.
Or maybe they have to go make dinner, and
right, there is that.
That's it, no more time.
Right.
So the transparency is very important, and also it's nice to have different sized containers. So for example, you can pick exactly the size container that you need and not put your beads into a very large container when really you don't need that.
Right, that's
so that
a good
really
idea.
helps you save space.
Yeah, and you can maximize the containers in the tray too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing with my seed bead stash. This is what it used to look like in this box, and I just put all my seeds in here, and I put them in here, and look, I still have all this extra room.
They look beautiful.
Yeah, and they're so colorful and fun, and I can label everything too.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and
you have quite a nice stash yourself.
Hey, yeah, you know, we all should just get together and have a swap.
That's right. Get rid of those excess. So another thing is that people like to track certain pieces of information about their beads. Some people like to keep buying the same color Swarovski crystal, or they need to know the size of a seed bead. A lot of people sell their work, and so if you mark how much you paid for something, then when you finish a piece and want to sell it, you know how much money you have invested in that piece.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, a nice way to keep track of what you have too. And like you said, with the duplicate purchases, that probably helps with that too.
Yes.
And you know what? I was thinking that you could make a copy of this or just cover it up if you needed to change the contents,
that particular label's removable.
Oh, you just take it
so
off and
when
put a
you've
new one.
sold or used up all those beads, you can just make up a new one.
Perfect. And do you have a lid for, oh yeah.
Yep, here's the lid. Put our beads away.
We're getting organized right here.
The next category I wanted to talk about was findings. So
let me move this one out of here.
Most findings, I think, can be organized either by metal finish or by function. So if you wanted to put all of your earring findings together, you could. If you wanted to put all of your clasps together, you could. I like to more organize them by color because, again, I usually want to reach for a copper or silver color.
And I love the way that all the metals look together, of course, but you also have the larger containers with head pins, and then you have your smaller containers, and this is fun with their multiple colors of toggles in the same.
Yeah, I had the same style but in multiple colors, so that was easy. And that's kind of my go-to toggle. It's very basic. But some things, you know, in jewelry making, some things are so tiny like crimps, you just don't need a very big container to hold them.
Right.
So this is like your average packaging from the store. You come home, take it out of the big package, just drop it in there.
Handy.
Put it away.
Oh yeah, and you know one thing I should mention too is they're so easy to get out of the tray because they have those little finger
grips.
Indentations.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And at least with this, if you dumped it over, you wouldn't be left picking up masses of mixed up beads. At least you could just pick up the containers and put the containers away
back in the tray.
Okay, another thing is, what do you do with the project when you're in the middle? You haven't finished it, maybe you're interrupted. You know, I have a cat. My cat likes to come and lay on top of all my work.
They always seem to find it.
Yes, unerringly. So this is a work in progress tray with a bead board. You can, you know, work on your projects. You know, you could have your containers sitting open here. But when you're finished, you can put it away for the day and then come back the next day. And if you're like me, the next day I never like it as well. So I don't even put the clasp on now. I just leave it on the tiger tail, and then when I come back the next day, if I want to make a change, it's easy.
Oh, that's a really good tip.
Yeah.
And let's take a look at this one.
This one is for the tools.
So this is category 3, our tools and
my tools and
stringing materials.
Stringing materials. The tools, everybody has go-to tools, and for beaders, I think those are your small pliers, your round nose pliers, your wire cutters, your crimpers. So I like to keep them handy.
Makes sense.
And then we have spools. I've gotten into wire working lately, so I have a lot of spools of wire, but of course, you know, your cord you can also stack right here in this spool.
Yeah, and I like that you could kind of grab these and go too. If you wanted to work somewhere else, you could just take this with.
Yeah, if you want to go to the living room and work in front of the television while you're watching Beads, Baubles and Jewels,
yeah, there you go. Perfect.
But I also, once in a while, I'll do work with larger tools like hammers, and so this is for the things that won't really fit elsewhere.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people also have bottles of resin and polymer clay and all those kinds of things that are big and oversized.
Yeah, I call this my junk drawer because all of those things, like that polymer clay that won't fit, I put in this bin, and I can still stack it and put it away with the rest.
Well, these are some great tips for organizing. I hope you're going to leave these for us because I can sure see a stack of these back here on the set.
Absolutely, you're more than welcome.
All right,
to keep
thanks,
them.
Elizabeth. It's been great having you. And thank you for joining us this week. Please stop by next time for a feature on pleasing patterns. We'll hope to see you next week on Beads, Baubles and Jewels.
Instructions for today's projects, plus other ideas, techniques, and tutorials are available on the web at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. This is Show 1805. If you enjoyed today's show and want to see more projects and great guests, download individual episodes for $2.99 each or order a complete DVD set of the entire Beads, Baubles and Jewels Series 1800 for $29.95 plus shipping and handling at beadsbaublesandjewels.com. Don't miss a single episode. Beads, Baubles and Jewels has been brought to you in part by Beading Daily, your jewelry making resource for how-to projects, books, magazines, DVDs, events, and online learning. BeadingDaily.com. Beadalon, a manufacturer of flexible bead stringing wires, memory wire, artistic wire, stringing materials, innovative findings, and tools to help you fashion your own jewelry. Beadalon.com. Dreamtime Creations, an online supplier of crystals, findings, and jewelry making supplies since 1989. DreamtimeCreations.com. Halcraft, jewelry component manufacturer. Halcraft.com.